I call to order the Waverly City Council for August 22nd, 2016. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed by our city clerk, Carla Geyer?
Move approval.
A motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion second. Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Those with no, this becomes our official agenda. We welcome back our guest council person for the month, Chuck Masick. Mashik. I'll get it right. Well, it's too late. This is the last chance. It's good to have you with us. At the end of last week, you didn't get a chance to make comments because we went so fast in the closing. Any opening comments you'd like to make?
The only comments I have for tonight are on behalf of the Knights of Columbus for this month.
Okay.
It's our annual Tootsie Roll Drive, our campaign for persons with intellectual disabilities. And we're out in the city on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this week from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. Our 4 locations this year are Hy-Vee, Fairway, the new Quick Star South, and Casey's on the west side. So if you get a chance, if you patronize any of those businesses, if you got any loose change, please drop it in and get a little token in exchange. So,
Knights of Columbus, you do good work. Yep. Good to have a little plug there for them, and it's good to have you here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments on any items that are not on tonight's agenda? Any comments by the public on any items not on tonight's agenda? We have one item on tonight's consent calendar. It's a pay request from Iowa Falls Roofing Company for their re-roofing of the Civic Center. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and seconded. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. The consent calendar is unanimously approved. Study session item number 1 is the Waverly Bark Park update. And I think that our Leisure Services Director, Cab Ray, would take the lead here. And we've been watching the evolution of our dog park and have official weigh-in here to let the public know what's what and where we're at and how well it's going is important at this time. I'd also say, as they're getting ready on the machinery here, that if you've driven by the dog park lately, you'll see it's in wonderful condition, and it looks like it's all the new grass is beautifully there, and it gives us a wonderful impression. So we can feel very good, but we need an official update. And want me to keep talking, Tab?
No, we should.
Yeah, I was loaded, but the other presentation was having issues, so I've got to get myself back on here. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I'll be right with you.
We'll just unleash Tab.
The
I do
Mayor
want
Pro
to
Tem
introduce
is
a couple of our
unleashed.
members out here,
Waiting for a
the
long
green
time.
shirts, and you'll notice it's Wolf. It's Waverly Off-Leash Friends. But she's got her green shirt on. All right, you're up. Here I am. Okay, good, thank you.
Tab, I do have a few extras of your handouts if that works.
He's good.
It's been 1 year since we opened up the Bark Park.
Is that in human years or dog years?
That is in human years.
All sorts. He's here all week.
So we thought it would be a good time to show you a few things that's happened. We established a group of friends called Waverly Off-Leash Friends. That's the wolf. Got it? See this right here? Stand up, William. Good. Yeah, we had 5 meetings in 2016. That's a lot less than we had in 2015. We were meeting practically every month in 2015. And usually it's the first Tuesday of the month at the Civic Center at 6 p.m. Mission statement, we intend to provide a service for people with dogs, including socialization, exercise, and training in a modern, well-maintained, safe, aesthetically pleasing facility for dog owners of today and tomorrow. We established some goals. Short-term, hold some events, support other agencies that support dogs, assist with maintenance, maybe every year workday, long-term future improvements, review of rules, because we looked at like 40 different sets of rules from across the country and came down with the rules that we have, and other policies regarding the use of the park. Programs that we've done in the past year, and this is usually in participation with other agencies, Chips for Dogs, that was with Compassionate Care Animal Hospital. That's where they for a fee, they would put a chip in your dog, and then it'd be identification, that kind of stuff, microchip. Dog Easter egg hunt. The first year we had 140, and last year we had about 70 for our Easter egg hunt. It's pretty wild. Wolf Volunteer Workday, the Wolf 4K Run with the Waverly JCs. That was a pretty cool event. We got about $1,000 off of that. Dog Days of Summer Dog Swim with us. We just completed that last Friday. We had 54 dogs before the storms came in. We had to close a little bit early, but that was a good event too. Bark for Life with the Cancer Society is coming up in October 9th. And then we have a Memorial Recognition Paver fundraising program where you can buy a paver that would go in the entryway to the dog park with memorializing or recognizing your dog. There's a couple of Dog Days of Summer photos. This is our new concept this year. We had a picnic table submerged, and the dogs liked it. It was like an island out in the middle. Might get a couple more of those for next year. Maintenance effort. We gained a 7-acre park in the Parks Department, basically. Maintenance, the main season is about 20 weeks long, May to mid-September. Pre-season, we put out trash receptacles, turn water on, make sure the drinking fountains are working. We reinstall shade structures. That's about 3 people for 2 hours. In the spring, this past year, we closed the large dog area. We had a large area that was worn out from grass, didn't have any grass in it, so we wanted to get it a chance to grow. And hence we seed it with grass, $30 for grass seed for 2 hours. Regular maintenance is emptying trash 2 times a week. That takes about 45 minutes times the 20 weeks equals 30 hours. We wanted to note that about 35 pounds of refuse each time, so total refuse is 1,400 pounds. Okay? Yeah, it's the refuse. Mowing once a week, about 8 hours. Drinking fountains as needed for 10 hours. Spraying 1 time a year, 3 hours. Weed trimming. Postseason, it's 3 people for about 3 hours. Total maintenance effort is about 168 hours of staff time. We spent $692 on dog bags, $30 on grass seed, and $65 on chemicals. And the dog bags are being used. We are much better than a lot of the communities I've seen with dog parks in terms of the responsiveness, responsibility of the users. So they are using the dog bags. We purchased 1,800 dog bags last year, and that's up from 600 bags in 14-15. And just an FYI, we had bags before, but we have dog bag dispensers in Coleman Park and South Riverside Park, Fairgrounds, Brookwood Park, the Rail Trail by Nestle, and the Trailhead Shelter. So if you're walking your dog around there, there are dog bags available. And any questions? We don't know how many people are using it. We know the busiest times are like 4 to 6, but we don't have a count of how many users are actually there. We know it's being used because of the amount of refuse we take out. I gave you all a summary sheet that has most of the same information on it, so you can share it with your friends and colleagues.
I know during the kind of open house that they had leading up to it, talked to a few of the folks from Wolf, and there were some questions maybe on additional devices they had out there. Do you have plans to?
Our next goal is to get dog playthings out there. It's agility equipment, and that's our main fundraising goal for hopefully next year. Do either one of you want to say anything? You want to say anything? We're good.
I guess before you sit down, I appreciate you giving the summary. That was a good summary. I appreciate everybody that's involved in the Wolf program and so forth. We've gone out there and I'll stop with the jokes. Our dogs love it. They told me so. But, no, but I mean it's a nice facility. I wonder, is there a way for people to provide feedback, or maybe it'd be nice to kind of keep people
Right on the rule sign at the bottom. It has our phone number and our email address.
I'd like if there's something they don't like, or not that there'd be anything wrong, but maybe because it's totally unattended, and in case they want to give you some feedback or something, they'd have a place to do it as opposed to just not coming back.
Yeah, and we have had some comments from.
We've enjoyed it. It's a great place.
On the contact us on the web page.
Yeah.
Those types of things. So I'm hoping people contact us if we hear something.
Did it come from my page too that I send you often?
Yes, she has a Facebook page, and she sends me the comments as well.
Great.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any last questions of Tab-Ray? Study session item number 2 is our Iowa Highway 3, Bremer Avenue reconstruction. We look for some public information. We had a wonderful pre-meeting, pre-council meeting in the Civic Center, and well attended and wonderful presentation. Tonight we look forward to a similar presentation. I'd like to call on, since Mike is at the microphone, if when you're ready, Mike, if you'd like to do a formal introduction of the presenters tonight, that would be good, if you're listening. And he's not.
Bear with us. We were having issues earlier, so I just want to save it on the desktop. I think I can just hit save. So we should be able to take this one out. Yep. That was up on top. On top. It just doesn't want to. Let me check here. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're having issues with the laptop recognizing the flash drives. We finally did get Scott's PowerPoint to pull up. The good thing is we always have. Okay, well, it's always good to have it saved on 2 different flash drives because we got the second one here, so.
PDFs.
No, I want the PowerPoint.
Okay.
I'm going to save it to
you.
Here's yours. Okay, I think we're good to go. So Scott has a short presentation here of 8 slides as an overview of the traffic study work that's been done and how it relates to the Waverly project. And then Dave Little with the Iowa DOT District 2 office is going to give a much expanded presentation that will take about 40 minutes to go through that talks about 3-lane conversions around the state. So we'll get started here with Scott.
Okay. There we go. Thank you for having us back here. This is sort of a overview of what I gave on the last council meeting. So we're going to go through it pretty quick and try to hit the main focus so you can listen to Dave give his presentation. Again, WHKS was hired by the Iowa Department of Transportation to provide an existing traffic study, or a traffic study. Well, now, there we go. Well, to look at the feasibility of implementing a road diet or a 4-lane to 3-lane reconfiguration along Bremer Avenue from 20th Street Northwest to 8th Street Northeast. Road diets may improve safety, convenience, and functionality of the roadway. What we did, we started out with the intersection analysis as we talked about the last time, where we went out and we did traffic counts of the AM and PM peak periods. Through that, we ran it through some software to determine what the level of service is, which is a measure of the delay that you have as you go through town. The existing configuration, which is the 4-lane configuration, we looked at 2016, which gave us a level of service of C or better. And basically when we're doing design work, level of service C is in the middle, and that's what we aim for. A is the best, F is the worst. So looking at 2016, as I said, we're at level of service C. 2036 traffic was gained by adding basically a 1% growth factor on the project corridor. And there we also came up with a level of service C or better for all the turning movements and the through movements. So substantially the same as we went through. There's some fluctuations either way, just depending on where the traffic was. We then looked at the 3-lane configuration, again, 2016 and 2036, and we basically came up with the same thing, level of service C or better for both 16 and 36. Therefore, as we look through that, the existing condition and the proposed, or the existing and the 3-lane conversion, provide the same level of service through the corridor. Then what we did is we looked through the 3-year period at traffic accidents along the corridor. Basically, there were 111 crashes reported along the corridor. As you can see, 91 had property damage. I tilted, I can read it. 91 had property damage. 17 possible injuries, 3 minor, no major or any fatalities on the stretch, but 111 crashes along the corridor. What we did then is we looked at the crash data for the entire city of Waverly. Reported crashes were 429 in the city, and 111 of those, again, were along the corridor. So that gives us about 25% of your crashes are on the Bremer Avenue corridor. Crash rate for Iowa 3 works out, when you calculate this out, 575 crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. The statewide average on a similar conditioned street in the state is 293. So basically, the crash rate on Iowa 3 is approximately twice the state average for a similar type roadway. We looked at Iowa DOT has done some studies. They looked at 15 corridors, and they had similar traffic, and these are what they experienced for the crash reduction rates on those. And the 4 in blue sort of highlight the 4 major ones that we saw in the corridor here on Iowa 3. Rear end reduction 35%, angle oncoming left turn lane or left turn 74%, and some of that is Going to a 3-lane, you have less conflict points. You have not as much shadowing of trailing traffic, so you can see ahead. Broadside were reduced 41%. That's some of your erratic motions when somebody stops on a 4-lane and you have to swerve to get past them being hit. Side swipe, same direction, is the same thing. So those are the crash reductions that we would expect to see along this corridor. One of the cities near here that did a conversion, Iowa 9 and Cresco, they did a conversion in 2008. They decreased 50% in total crashes, 64% in injuries, and a decrease of 52% in property damage cost. Dave will get into some more numbers that goes along with that, with his study or his presentation. But basically what it boils down to, based on the study that WHKS did for the Iowa Department of Transportation, the corridor, converting it to a 4-lane, from a 4-lane to a 3-lane section with left turns or 2-way left turns is both feasible and recommended based on the traffic study that we did. So that's what I'm going to present here. I know Dave, we can load up his and he can go through, and then at the end, if you want to ask both of his questions, it's probably premature to ask questions just of this study until we see sort of what Dave does, if that's all right with everybody.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm David Little, Assistant District Engineer with the DOT out of the Mason City District 2 office. I have Nick Kumpel here with me. He's a design engineer in my staff. He's the one who's watching over the day-to-day design of the project. I'm going to talk to you largely about the safety aspects of 4 to 3-lane conversion. First, I'd like to thank you for your time. I had the pleasure of being here before the council some years ago, I'm not sure how many it was, to hear about your concerns over pavement condition. At that time, I offered that probably the best we could do would be a mill and resurfacing project. I heard input from the council, strong input to the contrary. Took that back to the DOT, and we were able to obtain funds to do the reconstruction. So we're looking forward to bringing a nice project to the city of Waverly. Going to be some issues along the way, but looking forward to a nice project when we get it done. So the first thing I wanted to do was just clear up. We've got page up. Come on.
Here's where I got it to work. Try that one.
Thank you. Sorry. I tried 3 other buttons and none of them worked.
Transportation engineers, not computer engineers.
Right, exactly. I wanted to clear up the issue of what a road diet is. We provided you some handouts. If you're doing your research into the issue and looking online, this project is referred to as a road diet. I prefer a 4 to 3-lane conversion as a term, or just plain 3-lane conversion. When we talk about diet, if you look at the definition, diet has a very broad meaning. Most of us think about dieting to lose weight, but if you eat what you eat and you continue doing that, then you are what you are. You go on a diet because you want to make a change. You want to lose weight, you want to gain weight, you want to improve your athletic performance, you want to lower your blood sugar, lower your blood pressure. There's a reason you want to make a change. The same concept applies to a highway configuration. A road diet is really looking at the highway as it exists, the traffic as it exists. We have an opportunity to make a change. Is there cause to make a change? In the Iowa DOT analysis of this, and in what WHKS has done on our behalf, we believe there is a reason to make a change, and that's because of the safety performance of the corridor. So how can we make that change? That's what we're going to talk about here. But all of these things, a 2 to 3-lane conversion, a 3 to 3, a 4 to 5, A 5 to 3, a 4 to 3, they're all road diets in the literature when you try to research them on the internet. Some are increasing capacity, some are decreasing capacity. Some are adding parking, some are taking parking away, some are making accommodations for bicyclists. There's a lot of different reasons you reconfigure a highway, but basically the concept is to reconfigure the highway to best serve the functions that we desire. So what are those functions? I put together my list. I think from the city council standpoint and the citizens, I think would come up with pretty much the same list. I guess that's my hope. We want mobility. From an Iowa DOT standpoint, we want to bring vehicles into your community, and we want to get them out. And our focus is probably a little bit more regionally. We also know that there's a lot of vehicles that pass through. We want to make that happen efficiently. I think the city wants to make that happen too. You want to get people from out of town into town. Would like to make improvements for accessibility. We will be doing that through assuring ADA compliance in the corridor. We want it to contribute positively to the economy. Our responsibility is to help the economy of the state of Iowa. Your interest is more local, but we share an interest that we want the highway to contribute, not detract from the economy. When I was here with you previously, the image that the highway was presenting of the city of Waverly was certainly part of your input to me. It's a roadway that's in poor condition. It reflects, it doesn't reflect on the city of Waverly as well as we would like it to. We're going to fix that with the project. We're going to fix it with either option, with the 4-lane or 3-lane. Parking will continue to be provided as it has been in the past. That's important in your downtown. The 3 items below are the ones that really changed the most between the 4-lane and the 3-lane, and are the ones I'm going to spend the bulk of my time addressing. Safety. If we continue to do what we've done in the past, then we get the same results. The 4-lane will get you exactly what you have. We'll talk about what that is. 3-lane, we believe we can make significant improvements in safety. Access to property, again, we want to get people to Wartburg, to City Hall here, to the courthouse, to the businesses, to the residences along the corridor. We'll provide the same, we'll provide those accesses in both options, but we think the improvements are a little bit better with the 3-lane. And then is this the chief back here? Representing the police force, though. Yes. A 3-lane becomes, to a large extent, a lot more self-enforcing of traffic laws. We would like to see your police department be able to concentrate on the many other priorities that they have, and less on being traffic cops, trying to control speeding, trying to control responding to crashes. You just have a lot of priorities for them. Would like to help them out. So safety, you've seen some of this information already from Scott's presentation. We've looked at 3 years of crash history, 110 crashes in the Iowa 3 4-lane corridor, 429 in the entire city of Waverly during that same time. 26% of the crashes in your community happen in that corridor, that 4-lane piece. Now, one of the citizens in the public meeting said, but travel probably happens. 26% of the travel in the community probably happens in that 4-lane. And he's probably right. But if you set out to reduce crashes, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we can effectively reduce crashes in this corridor for zero investment. If you try and chase around town to the other crash locations and improve things to reduce crashes, to reduce 50 crashes in a 3-year period, you'll spend vast amounts of money and probably never get it. This is an opportunity you have to concentrate on this corridor. 20 of these 112 crashes, about 20%, resulted in injuries, a total of 24 injuries, so some crashes had more than one injury. Property damage losses, the $400,000 is the amount estimated by your police officers when they investigate crashes. If you remember, no state law, a crash has to be reported when the estimated vehicle damage is $1,500 or more, or when there's a personal injury. We know that there are, who knows, well, we don't know how many, that's the problem. There are unreported crashes, probably more than one for every one that's reported. So this is probably a low estimate of what's really going on. But these are vehicle damage losses, $400,000 over 3 years. And then there's the cost of injuries. Scott showed you that there are no fatals. There are no major injuries. There are a few minor injuries and mostly possible injuries. When we evaluate those injuries on the basis of investments of safety funds, we would value the crashes that you're having in your corridor in those 3 years at $720,000. Economic loss of $1.1 million total property damage and injury losses in a 3-year period. Now those costs are ones being borne by citizens of Waverly. If you get in a crash, who spends the first $1,000 to fix your vehicle? Or the first $500? It's your deductible. Comes right out of your pocket. I had a teen driver who got in a crash. And our rates went up, sky high, just based on one rear-end crash that my teen driver was involved in. And we paid those higher in premiums for a long time. When rates are being set for everybody's auto insurance, they're looking at the safety of the community. This is where most of your driving happens. Your insurance premium rates are set in part, based on your own driving experience, but also based on the driving experience of everybody else out in the highway. If we can reduce crashes, that should help moderate. You won't see a $500 decrease in your premium tomorrow, but over time, should help moderate your insurance premiums. If a person gets transported to the hospital, quick $1,000. You go and, I don't know what the charges are, but transport a few blocks to get an x-ray, find out whether they're really injured or not. There's the cost of transport, there's the cost of emergency medical care, probably follow-up medical care, physical therapy, lost time at work. Your employers feel that when they have employees get injured. These are costs borne by the community. They're real costs. Nobody totals them up, but we've taken an effort at trying to provide an idea of what those are. So let's talk about crash rates. Scott mentioned that you have a crash rate in the 4-lane corridor of 575 crashes per 100 million vehicle miles. 100 million vehicle miles is a measure of travel. We use that measure of travel so that we can compare corridors of different lengths and corridors of different traffic volumes to each other. So for a given amount of travel, we can calculate a crash rate. Based on your traffic volume of about 10,700 average through the corridor, times the length of the corridor at a mile and 3/4, you would reach that 100 million vehicle miles of travel in about 14 and a half years. So it's a very long time, but it helps us equate those. The Iowa urban average is located right in the middle. I don't have a pointer. I guess I could find my cursor, but right in the middle, right at 300, number's actually 293, is what we see for an urban highway average in the state of Iowa. Your 3-lane corridor to the east operates at about 126, less than half of the statewide average. Your 4-lane corridor over towards the right side of the slide shows your crash rate at 575. So for a given amount of travel by your community, the crash rate in the 4-lane section on the same roadway is 4 times higher than the crash rate on the 3-lane section. That's data that's accumulated by your police force. It's data that reflects the experiences you have in the community as citizens. I put 2 other corridors in here that we'll talk about. Clear Lake US 18 was a 3-lane conversion we did in 2003. You can see where their 4-lane crash rate is over there, close to 600 on the far right. After the 3-lane conversion, they got to under 200. So a dramatic increase in safety for the cost of painting new lines. Cresco, Iowa 9, Scott already mentioned, their crash rate was over 500. We got it down to the high 200s, again through change in pavement markings.
I just asked, so that slide, you're saying that it compares per million vehicles per mile. But it doesn't really take into effect, I mean, like you said, the Highway 3 on our east side is very low in accident rate per every million vehicles.
Right.
And
You don't have the same driveway density, you don't have on-street parking, there are factors there.
Right, I mean, so
Make it
obviously,
different.
there's, 1/4 or 1/5 the traffic out there than there is downtown, and there's no stoplights out there, there's no, turning lanes, there's no,
There are no crashes out there. We found 13 crashes in the same time period.
yes.
10 of them were hitting an animal.
Yeah,
So
I'm just trying to say,
operationally, there's no crashes out there whatsoever. It's also higher speed.
yeah, it's 55 or 45, depending on where you're at, so, yeah. But you're just going purely based off, it could be one car per day, and that's the rate.
And we could calculate a crash rate.
Right.
Yes.
But you're not taking into account, this doesn't show the congestion that causes crashes. Like if we looked at what downtown Des Moines or Interstate 80 in downtown Iowa City was, they're going to be higher just because it's always packed. Highway 965, for example, from Coralville to North Liberty.
The crash rate normalizes the traffic volumes. The traffic volumes feed into that mileage. The traffic volumes times the length feeds into that denominator, the 100 million vehicle miles of travel. So it's not a perfect measure, but it's a good one. And yes, the corridors have different characteristics. But you've got good experience here. Your drivers know, your citizens know how to navigate a 3-lane corridor already. That's an advantage.
Yeah,
that we
I would
have
just
here.
say there's literally no traffic out there compared to downtown, but yes.
But you can see
I get
Clear
what
Lake
you're
here.
saying here with
We'll-
this.
We'll talk about Clear Lake down the line here. So keep that in mind. It's a good thought. So why is a 3-lane safer? I've boiled it down to 4 reasons. One is the driving decisions are simpler. We'll talk about that. The speeds are more uniform. We'll talk about that. Drivers can better see conflicting vehicles and other road users, not just vehicles, but we think, the pedestrians and the other users in the corridor should enjoy a safe corridor. And the 3-lane is more forgiving of poor driver decisions. So I'll expand on each of those as we move forward. Making driving decisions simpler. This is a graphic representation of what traffic engineers refer to as a conflict point analysis. The idea behind it is that an average driver can only process so many conflicts at a time. And as the intersection becomes more complicated, then the chances of being in a crash go up. So just a very simple graphic representation of the major conflict points in a 4-lane undivided highway versus a 3-lane. You cut the conflict points in half. Driving decisions are simpler. It's a way of contributing to fewer crashes. Speeds are more uniform. In the case of Clear Lake, their corridor carries more volume than what is in Waverly. It's a higher developed version of what you have out on the east end of town. Lots of commercial accesses, pretty closely spaced commercial accesses. Grain elevator right on the corridor, you can see in the left-hand side of the photo. So there's ag vehicles in here, about 13,000 ADT at a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. So it's a little different in character, but we did a before and after speed study here. Before the 3-lane conversion, the average travel speed in the corridor was 49 miles an hour. After the 3-lane, it was 48 miles an hour. We lost 1 mile an hour in average speed. So whether that's real or not, you gather data. There's probably a 3 mile an hour error here, possible error in just our measurement process. Speeds were effectively the same after the 3-lane conversion. What happened is the slower drivers actually sped up. The faster drivers slowed down. At the right-hand side there, you can see we had a lot of speeding issues there. That was one of the reasons why we talked to Clear Lake, why they talked to us about a 3-lane conversion. 68% of their drivers in the corridor were speeding. 2/3 were exceeding the speed limit. a quarter of the drivers were exceeding the speed limit by 5 miles an hour or more. They had a problem. Following the 3-lane conversion, overnight, we dropped that percent speeding down to 46. You still got half the drivers going past the speed limit. That reflects that average speed of 48 miles an hour and a 45. Still good mobility, but the number of drivers, speeding more than 5 miles an hour, really excessive, aggressive speeding, got cut down to 12%. So we really made a dent in that. And that's without any enforcement activity. That's just a change because of the highway environment. This is why it's important. This is a chart showing the results of a number of studies, nationally and U.S. and internationally. One of these studies looked at 10,000 police reconstructed crashes, so a high level of detail in these analyses. The chart shows in the middle there, right down the middle, there would be a line there at the low point of the curve, represents the mean speed in a corridor. And what this is showing is that as you deviate from the mean speed, if your speeds go up, you're traveling faster than the mean speed, or your speeds go down, you're traveling slower than the mean speed. The further you get away from the mean speed of everybody else in the corridor, the probability of your being involved in a crash goes up. So we use this in the theory for setting speed zones. We go out and measure speeds. We try to set a speed zone that reflects what the majority of drivers are driving, trying to get them to compress their speeds in a narrow range so that speeds are uniform, and the results, should be the best results in terms of crashes. So that's why that's important. Here's the situation we've got. We've got a driver sitting here in a car on a side road waiting to make either a crossing maneuver to cross the highway or to make a left turn. So the task there is to look to your left, judge the speed and distance of 2 oncoming vehicles, pivot your head, look to the right, judge the speed and distance of 2 other oncoming vehicles, decide if you have the 9 to 13 second gap that you need to make this maneuver. If you decide you have that gap, you pull out and you go. And for people who play golf, what do the golf courses do 150 yards out from a green? They plant a bush. And they plant a bush, why? Because people can't judge distance. When they're sitting there with a static ball, a static target, and they can't judge distance. So you apply that same, relative inability to a highway situation. People can't judge distance very well. They can't judge speed very well. When you got 2 lanes of traffic coming at you, one of them's going faster than the other. You got to judge that. They're going at different speeds. It becomes a very complex decision. The other part that comes into play here is a concept we call shadowing. So if you think about being back in that same, I think it was a Ford Taurus, the little green vehicle there. I'm very tall. I'm standing up on a curb. I'm taking this photo, 3 feet higher than that person's eye is if they were sitting here in this situation. You can see that passenger van sitting there. In the right-hand turn, it's got a turn signal on. It's slowing down to make a right turn. That full-size school bus is hidden from view. If you glance at the highway, looking to see if you have that safe gap, at that instant, that full-size school bus is hidden behind that passenger van. When these corridors were 4-laned, I don't know when yours was done. I was going to look that up, and I didn't get around to it, but I imagine it was in the 50s or 60s when this corridor was 4-laned. There's several things that have happened now since then. 1984, Chrysler introduced the minivan. Pickup trucks, arose as a passenger vehicle. A lot of passenger vehicles got taller. A lot of them got smaller. We had a big change in the vehicle fleet. Tinted windows. Tinted windows came into play. We all remember sitting there trying to judge a gap and being able to look through the windshield and out the back window to see that car behind it. And now with tinted windows, we can't do that. The other thing is that those vehicles have all been designed to have stronger A-pillars. The A-pillar is the front support of your roof. I've got a 71 Skylark that I tool around in. You know, its A-pillar is about that big around. Now they're that broad, you know, and they're slanted. It's a safety feature for the vehicle to create a safe occupant compartment, but it blocks visibility out of the vehicle. So those three things in my mind have contributed to making this type of driving decision tougher now than it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s when these 4 lanes were originally constructed. So let's look at this from above in a graphical setting. Again, we've got that vehicle positioned on the side road, waiting to make their left turn out onto the 4 lane, judging the speed and distance of oncoming vehicles. They see this driver in the right-hand turn lane slowing down, turn signal on. In the 4-lane configuration, that there's possibility for a vehicle to be hidden from view behind it. In the 3-lane setting, we've opened up that sight. There's only one lane of oncoming traffic. Now that person making that decision, do I have my 9 or 13-second gap, can make that decision. If a vehicle's slowing down to make a right turn, the vehicle behind it has to slow down too. It's a safe maneuver, and it's easy to judge. The same thing happens in a left turn setting. With a 4-lane undivided, we have what we talk about as opposing lefts. The lefts are offset from each other, so that one left-turning vehicle blocks sight distance behind the other left-turning vehicle. You can see on this approach, the one's trying to make a turn, the other one's trying to make a turn. There's a through vehicle behind the one. If the driver doesn't observe that second vehicle behind it, that sets up, again, another broadside type of collision. In the 3-lane conversion, we have those opposing left turns now opposed. They're in the same, positioning on the roadway. So the one left turner can see past the other left turner far enough down the road. You can't see all the way down the road, but you can see the several hundred feet down the road you need to find that gap, that 9 to 13-second gap, in order to complete the maneuver safely. We don't see these situations in a lot of police reports, but when we discuss them with police agencies, they start to recognize that this really does occur. This is one example of a crash report. It's showing the vehicles up on top, Unit 1 and Unit 2 colliding. It's showing the presence in that inside lane of a third vehicle making that left turn, exactly that left turn situation I just talked about. It's an uninvolved vehicle. This person wasn't involved in the crash at all, but contributed to it unwittingly by just being out there and blocking sight distance to a vehicle behind. So police agencies that are cognizant of this, then they have to build this detail into their narrative, into their diagram, because it really doesn't show up anyplace in the rest of the form. But we know it exists. So Clear Lake, again, we did the 4 to 3-lane conversion in 2003. You can get a sense here for how heavily developed that corridor is. Basically, the lots of city street connections and lots of commercial properties along the corridor. From this is the Main Street intersection, North 8th Street. We did the 3-lane conversion in 2003 west of that intersection and left the corridor from that intersection over to I-35 as a 4-lane, carrying about 12,500 vehicles in the 3-lane section, about 1,500 in the 4-lane, so they're fairly comparable. 45 miles an hour throughout. We reviewed the crash history again in the 09 through 2013 crash history. And the point of this slide is that these crash reduction benefits aren't a honeymoon period. They persist. It's because the change in the highway function and the highway character. You can look at the raw number of crashes in the corridor. We have about half in the 3-lane as we do in the 4-lane. The crash rate is way reduced, 256 versus 409. Major injuries, minor injuries, possible injuries are all half. in the 3-lane as they are when compared to the 4-lane. About the same length of corridors, roughly the same traffic, exactly the same speed limit, and we see benefits that are persisted for over a decade, and we expect them to continue. So why is capacity maintained? We argue that there's very little change. You have a level of service C provided in the corridor for either situation, for either configuration. Well, we maintain that capacity in a little different way. Neither Scott or I are going to argue that it's going to be exactly the same driving experience, but that level of service C is a measure of average delay. Motorists come up to an intersection, they're going to spend so much time, a few seconds, level of service C is in the range of 20 seconds. 20 seconds delay on average before they can complete their maneuver. Some people will hit the light, some people won't. So you can look at this photo in Clear Lake and take a look at this. This is a 4-lane operating as a de facto 3-lane. You've got one vehicle pulling up to the light to make a left turn, and you can count the number of vehicles that have shifted over to the right because they don't want to wait for that left turner to find his gap. This is at a signalized intersection. 6 or 7, 8 vehicles, I don't know how many we can count there. You see this all the time at every intersection, at every business access, at every point along your corridor. As soon as you you get one person stopping to find a gap to make a left turn. How many through lanes do you have? 1. So the 3-lane really has much the same capacity as a 4-lane does. That's a hard pill for people to swallow, but the other, I don't know how to go back now, oops. The other issue is concerning right turners, and I alluded to that in my one chart that talked about access and why I would argue that access is improved to businesses, to all the amenities along your corridor. There's 2 parts of that. First of all, in a 3-lane, you automatically have a left turn lane, a left turn storage lane at every point of access in the corridor. So people feel safer pulling over to make a left turn direct into a property. The other part of it is in right turns. When you have a panel truck, a single unit truck, a big pickup, a dually, any kind of vehicle like that trying to pull into a business access that's narrow, what do they have to do when they're making the right turn? They're driving right next to the curb. They've got to basically come to a stop. Sometimes wait for, a person to pull out. In the 3-lane, they're already positioned 5 feet away from that curb at a minimum. They've got room, to be out closer to the center of the highway in a 3-lane and make a more gradual turn into the access. And if they can make a gradual turn into that access or that side street at 5 miles an hour, maybe 10 miles an hour, that's a big impact on capacity for your through lane versus they having to come to almost a stop. So there's 2 ways that we build capacity back in. We take it away in people's minds by removing that second through lane, but we add the capacity back in by improving, the turning maneuvers and the impact that those have on the through capacity of the 1 lane.
Can I ask one question here in this picture?
Absolutely.
What happens if the opposite is true, where you actually have more people that want to turn left than go straight or right? Because Waverly has that in a couple.
Yes, you do.
So then the turn lane would be backed up. And we all, like in this case, if this was downtown, this would be a whole city block, so there'd be a stoplight already.
Yep.
I mean, and there's no parallel parking or anything. But how does it work if more people want to make a left turn than a right?
Well, it's the same. Those same vehicles are going to want to make a left turn in the 4-lane, so the maneuver is going to be the same. We can actually probably detect better when we have those through vehicles separated out from the left turning vehicles. We can probably detect better through the signal system. Measure. I don't know what kind of detection we have here in existing signal system, but the capacity would be there the technology would be available to detect that length of queue and adjust the signal timing on the fly to some extent, convert to a different timing plan And
That's one thing, yeah, we can, I believe, adjust our timings on our lights, but I don't know if we do that, but we have the radar detection. It's all video, you can look and see.
yeah, I'm not sure what you do here for those signals, but
But, if you're coming in and you're going from east to west, and you want to turn left to go on 4th to go out to Walmart, McDonald's, and et cetera.
sure.
There's a lot of times during the day where it's backed up from there all the way past this corner, down to middle of downtown. That's 6, 7, 8 blocks of traffic. That means that turning lane would be blocked with all cars wanting to turn left through 6 or 8 blocks.
And we probably won't improve that. It's the way it is now, and it's going to be that way in the 3-lane, but we pull those left turners out now, we separate them from the through traffic, and can provide, hopefully we can provide better performance through there just because we can identify which maneuver those, through the signals that those drivers are making.
So if you only have one turning lane and everyone's going to turn left to go to McDonald's or Walmart, how does anyone get in the turn lane then the turn left if you're going east to go to Walgreens or Fairway or Tenenbaums, or because all the turning lane's already full with everyone going?
How do they get there now?
Well, there isn't a turn lane, so you can sit in the left lane and wait your turn.
Yeah, this is that revised modified section between 1st and 4th.
But it even carries over the bridge. I mean, traffic backs up way over the bridge many, many times. So
You need to take a look at the modified section that they've prepared and presented tonight.
I've heard about, yeah. Yep. But I guess how does that, if it's backed up all the way past City Hall here, down to past the poorhouse and down to Tenenbaums, which it is during certain times of the day, how does that affect downtown, where we have stoplight every single block, parallel parking? I guess we can go on.
Yeah, I
No
guess
one
I'm not
seems to
understanding
understand
why
what
the
I'm trying to
situation
say.
is different. You have it now. We probably won't fix that
Okay.
with the 3-lane. There's probably things we can do, if there are, like I say, I don't know what kind of technologies you have in your signal systems in terms of detection and things, but there are things we could.
I think the situation Wes may be referring to is, if we have a construction project that results in a lane drop. So a year ago, we were doing work on 2nd Street Northwest. We did a water main project where we had to tap in. We did a lane drop. So everyone had to shift over to the inside lane. And yes, so when someone wants to turn left, traffic backs up for many, many blocks. On a more routine basis, I think during the peak hour turning movements as are identified here from 3 to 5 p.m., we do get backup for 2 to 3 blocks. So we'll back up traffic wanting to turn south on 4th Street. It'll get back up through the 3rd Street intersection. It'll get backed up past the entrance into Fairway, and sometimes, yes, all the way down to 2nd Street.
It goes all, because I've sat on the Bremer Bridge many times because traffic is backed
Yeah,
up.
and maybe, I guess the question I had with that same issue or challenge that people have told me about is if we go down to 3 lanes, all the people that want to turn left are going to have to be in the right lane until they get 4 blocks up. So I guess my question I was coming with tonight pertaining to that, wouldn't it back the traffic up way far back? Because today we're filling 2 lanes, but there, all those cars that want to turn left are going to have to go into that right lane.
Into the left lane.
No, the right lane. So today there's 2 lanes of traffic going the same direction.
Sure.
And we got 4 blocks of backed up cars waiting to turn left. But if they can only turn left, if they can only get into the turning lane until that last block, where do they go? I guess what I would think is they'd have to go into that right lane and we'll have traffic backed up.
Because legally, you can't
Further.
be in the turning lane 4 blocks before you turn left at a corner. That'd be illegal, right?
Well, it wouldn't be illegal, you'd have to turn. So from your experience in other situations, I was just curious how that would work out.
My guess is it's going to be exactly the same as it is. We're going to paint in. We're not building We're not building a raised, islands to channelize traffic. We're going to paint that. My guess is during those peak times, drivers actually back up on top of that painted channelization and will pass through.
So I think one of the questions is, do we do those painted island sections at like 2nd Street and 3rd Street for that westbound traffic? Because some people may be like, I really shouldn't pull over the painted median, and so they're going to sit in that outside lane and back traffic up.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're talking about. I think that does warrant some additional discussion. But that's one portion of this corridor, and you still have about 15 more minutes to go through, and maybe we can come back to that.
Then I raised an issue that we think a 3-lane highway tends to become more self-enforcing in terms of traffic laws. There's no opportunities to pass. So the reasonable driver sets the speed. You aren't going to have the ability to zoom through the corridor at 45, switching lanes to try to avoid the left-turning traffic or right-turning traffic. One reasonable driver out there sets the speeds. So the need for your police officers to be out there doing a lot of speed enforcement probably just goes away just because of the nature of the highway. We'll have a reduction in reported crashes. We expect to be in the range of 50%. We know that for every reported crash, there's probably, I don't know, make your best guess. We don't know because we don't have data. Nobody records them, but there may be 2 or 3 unreported crashes, minor fender benders. Your police still respond to those, but they don't file a report. And if they do file a report, we don't accept them if they're below that $1,500 in value. They just don't show up in our data. So a lot of response time out there that your police spend. We imagine you probably have a lot of priorities for them. You could divert some of their energies to other priorities. So what kind of safety improvement is possible? Scott went through some of that. Nationally accepted crash reduction estimates for these types of corridors based on Iowa data is 47% reduction in total crashes. It breaks out a little differently. Rear-end crashes, you've got 53 of those in those 3 years. Rear-end crashes are reduced about 35%. That's because we're a lot more effective at reducing left turn related rear-end crashes when that vehicle in front is turning left than we are right turn related rear-end crashes. Broadside crashes are typically down 41%. Side swipe same direction. Those are 2 vehicles going in the same direction, but they're interacting, they're crashing because one's shifting lanes. Those go down 49%. That angle oncoming left turn one that I showed you go down 73%, and those are broadside crashes. Those are the types where your injuries occur. Head-on crash, you had one of those in your 4-lane. In all my years of looking at 3-lane conversions, I only know of one head-on crash. We talk about that center turn lane. People talk about it as a suicide lane or a chicken lane. I've only seen a crash report for one head-on crash in a center turn lane. They just don't happen. People worry about them, but they just don't happen.
Can you say something about that? Suicide lane, what do you mean, and why would we call it that? Why do people call it that?
It's a center turn lane, so both directions of traffic are using it to make their left turn maneuvers. So they're occupying the same space. But I think the thing is, they're heading right at each other. They're pulling in there only to make a turn, so they're going very slowly. They understand what each other's about. So, yeah, thank you for that clarification. It just doesn't happen. But people talk about it that way, as fear that there's going to be a whole bunch of people piling up in that center turn lane, and it just doesn't happen. So, in Cresco, I've used those experiences there to, in Cresco, we cut the total crash rate by 50%. It pretty much matches what national guidance would tell us is possible. There we did a little further analysis to look at what we did in terms of reducing property damage losses, what we did in terms of reducing injuries, and how severe those injuries were. So we reduced crashes by 50%, but we reduced injuries by 64%. And those injuries were less severe. We moved minor injuries to possible injuries. They're less severe crashes, so those economic losses that were estimated, to be reduced by 77%. So you not only have fewer crashes, but you have fewer injuries resulting, and those injuries that do result should be less severe. So if we would achieve those same results here in Waverly that we achieved in Cresco, the injury losses, the costs that are borne by citizens in your community could be down by $750,000 over 3 years. Those are the injury costs. The property damage costs we estimate could be down about another $270,000. So these are very real things that we're talking about. And it's the question, it becomes that ultimate question. Are we willing to take a chance on a different experience, one that we have a lot of grounding in terms of at the DOT in terms of experience and having success with? Are you willing to take that leap here with us as our partners, accept some minor issues in terms of mobility in order to reap the safety benefits? There's going to be times when you're going to find a slow-moving vehicle. It's going to happen when you're 2 minutes late for your dentist appointment already. You're going to pop out there on Bremer Avenue. You're going to get stuck behind a slow-moving vehicle. You're going to lose another minute getting across town. You'll be 3 minutes late for your dentist. It's going to happen. You're all going to have that experience. Most of the time, it's going to operate very nicely for you.
Just before, I guess, that slide, you go back, I wonder, do you have, that's really interesting information, it's compelling. Do you have, I guess, information comparing to Cresco's, as I look at the community of Cresco, the road that goes through Cresco, I don't see very many similarities between that and Waverly. Would you have a community, I guess, similar population, similar demographics of Highway 3, going straight through a busy downtown area with manufacturing on both sides?
Your best match, I think, is right here, City of Sioux Center.
Okay.
US 75. They undertook a 3-lane conversion in, I believe it was 1999. They were one of the early ones. At that time, they had 14,000 vehicles a day passing through US 75 right through their downtown. We did the 4 to 3-lane conversion primarily because of pedestrian safety issues that they had. So the city council there revisited, the DOT made them a deal. Let's convert it. If you don't like it, we'll convert it back. That can happen here, if we take the plunge with this project to convert it back to a 4-lane. If it doesn't work as we hope, it's a matter of repainting the corridor, removing the old markings, putting new ones down, unbolting a few traffic signal heads and shifting them in position along the traffic signals, maybe a little changing timing and phasing, and we convert it back. But anyhow, Sioux Center did this, and these are some quotes from the paper. These are actually from the police chief. The police chief that was there in '99 is still there. I would encourage your chief of police to call him. Mayor, I would encourage you to call the mayor. Council members, pick the Sioux Center council member of your choice, get online, find a name and a phone number, and call them. Talk to your peer and figure out how it's working for their community. It's still in place. They've revisited it several times as council members have changed over, and they've continued to maintain it in place.
As far as you know, in the Sioux Center case, was there a lot of pushback to doing that up front before they did it in the first place?
Oh, absolutely. It's that way in every community. This is a hard sell. It really is. Every community has these kinds of questions about, what's it going to be, how's it going to work? Our traffic is high. We've got ag vehicles passing through the corridor. What happens if? These are very real conversations we're having here. That's why I would encourage you to talk to another city. Find your counterpart in another city that's done one of these. I've highlighted, listed some on your list of resources, some communities that have done these. Pick a community, pick Cresco, pick a community you want to. Bloomfield is one that's just going through one right now. They're doing one this summer. Sioux Center, I think, is a corridor that matches up very nicely with Waverly, because it is a high volume, low speed highway right through the center of downtown, right through their business district. It's very, very similar.
Yeah, I guess the population is, I mean, it's not, it's hard to explain, but it's not as dense. There's not an intersection of highways and stuff, but yeah, it's closer, I think, than Cresco. And you made a
Cresco has about half your traffic.
You made a comment about agricultural equipment, and when we were talking with people in the meeting before the meeting, mentioned that if you had we have agricultural equipment going down Bremer Avenue.
Sure.
And you mentioned that if it was over 12 foot, it would have to use that, basically the bike lane. Can you, I guess, talk more about that, or maybe if we have a question and answer section afterwards, we can talk through that.
Well, real quickly, as I'm seeing it, if you have an oversized vehicle come through the corridor now, they have a normal 12-foot lane, and there's a curb adjacent to it, or parking.
Okay.
So if that vehicle exceeds the width of the lane, they have to intrude on the lane beside them.
Yeah.
And so if you're stuck behind that vehicle, you really don't have an opportunity to get past them unless you swerve out around center line.
Yeah.
So if you happen to be the one behind that vehicle, too bad. You lost that trip through town. You plowed through behind them.
Yeah.
And
I'm not so concerned about the vehicle behind. I'm concerned about the piece of equipment getting through safely. I mean, it can be 18 feet minimum.
Sure.
If you got 12 plus 5, how do you do that?
You have an oversized center turn lane.
But then you're driving into oncoming traffic.
You're driving into oncoming traffic that is slow, that probably sees you coming. People will adjust to this.
That wouldn't fly. If someone hit that combine, it wouldn't fly.
But nobody's going to hit that combine.
Okay.
Tell me an Iowa city that doesn't have ag vehicles in it.
Yeah.
That's part of our life here.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa City.
Yeah,
Waterloo, Cedar Falls.
And the trouble that what I'm trying to get by is the river. Unfortunately, we're constrained.
Exactly.
Many
Exactly.
towns you can take around, you can take a smarter way. Unfortunately, we're constrained by the river, and you have to get across the river. So I was just, if you had any ideas on how we can accommodate that, or because I think there's a lot of benefits to the 3-lane. But
my argument will be it'll just accommodate itself. Drivers are smart enough; they're going to see a combine.
But that doesn't. I know for a fact that doesn't work.
I know this question's come up quite a few times, and my question back is, the two dealerships that I know of are south of town. They have to come north on 4th Street, which up until recently for 8 blocks was only a 2-lane, and they're able to make that trip to get to Bremer Avenue without an issue. How are they not going to travel Bremer Avenue without an issue if they can get by in a 2-lane?
I followed one out of town today, so it was actually going from, it was on Bremer and then turned and went.
Again, they're traversing a 2-lane street with very minimal extra distance, and they're making the trip. So I understand the question, the concern.
Absolutely.
But
and it's
they're navigating a street that is narrower and more congested. I just looked up
What street's
at
2-lane,
8th.
though? It's
4th Street. From Burger King to Dairy Queen, up until recently, was only a 2-lane street. With looking at DOT counts as 11,600 visits a day. We're talking about Main Street that's 8,800.
Yeah.
And they make a trip down a busier 2-lane street to get to a 4-lane street, and they can still get through town. So
But the difference is we didn't vote to approve that.
we voted to make 2.5 blocks of it 3-lane.
Yeah.
We're going to vote to make the rest of it 3-lane. So
Yeah, we'll get to
There's,
that.
there's still going to be the same amount of pavement out there. Nobody's shrinking the highway. What's going to be, there are going to be some paint lines out there trying to channelize people.
And that's just my concern is I'm just looking for ideas, I guess, from your experience on how that can happen. Because assuming that we're going to use a bike lane and a turning lane doesn't
It's not enough.
work. Yeah.
They'll intrude a bit out into that center turn lane, which is 14 feet wide. Your average passenger vehicle is about 7 feet wide. So, they can, a passenger vehicle in the left turn lane can scooch out, provide another 7 feet of width in there. It'll,
Because today people were passing on the right because there's enough room to pass the combine on the right because it was 2 lanes of traffic, I guess.
that's not good. Passing on the right.
Well, when you're out there, there's no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'd
I
be
mean, it's a
different if
non-event.
you were downtown.
I mean, you can get
You
through.
can't downtown because there's parallel parking.
You can go around 10th Avenue on one side, but 10th Avenue doesn't go through on the other side yet. So I'm just trying to figure out how.
Yeah,
that would
I understand the
happen.
concern, but
Yeah.
I think people just, there's enough room out there, that's part of it being a kind of a forgiving cross-section. People just find a way to make that happen, get that combine through
You know,
there.
I guess I've seen evidence where if accidents happen, that's not the case. So just trying to figure out how that would work.
If somebody hits a combine, it probably is a police-reported crash, I would assume. Yeah. Anyhow, Sioux Center, or this is Centerville, a newspaper article that they did talking about their later conversion in 2010. First full year, accidents took a sharp decline on the highway. They also mentioned that personal injuries also took a sharp decline. The numbers are there. They noted in particular the point I'm trying to get across. Down at the bottom, it's not highlighted, but in 2011, Centerville Police Department worked 169 total crashes. An accident, a number which has dropped from 249, 230, and 187 in the previous years. So it really can make an impact on the safety of the whole community. This is Ingersoll Avenue. This would be a different, much more urban corridor in Des Moines. Ingersoll Avenue is about a 2-mile-long corridor south of I-35, or I-235. Carries 17,000 vehicles a day along its length. The Des Moines City Council did this primarily to include bike lanes. They wanted to make a bike accommodation in the corridor. It has very heavily commercially developed, a mix of diagonal and parallel parking. They went at it because they wanted to provide a bike accommodation. They found the benefit. They reduced their crashes by that magic 50% number. What's curious about it is that traffic went up 5% in the corridor. Drivers in the community saw this as a favorable corridor to drive versus the other parallel corridors. It actually drew more drivers to it because of the 3-lane than it had when it was a 4-lane. That's a measure of community acceptance. Then there's that quote there from the City View, an independent weekly paper down there in the town. We were critical of the Des Moines City Council for its decision to approve the restriping of Ingersoll Avenue, to change it from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. On all accounts, we were wrong. Our concerns proved to be unwarranted. So they probably didn't have the ag vehicle issue, but they certainly had heavy, heavy volumes. Concerns about bike safety, concerns about capacity. They have delivery trucks coming into the corridor, probably not ag vehicles, but very successful project, and you have a copy of a Federal Highway Administration case study on this project. So I've given you a list of resources. If you wanted to, I know several of you are already doing your research. I've given you links to get to several of those things. I guess what I wanted to point out here is the first link there is guidelines that Iowa State University developed for Iowa DOT 2001. At 2001, we had enough experience doing these conversions in Iowa to develop our own guidelines for guiding us in doing future ones. Federal Highway has picked this idea up, the road diet idea up, developed guidelines. They're promoting it as a national initiative. under their Everyday Counts program to try to push this technology out to all the states. They developed their guidelines in 2014, 13 years after we did it. Kentucky, bottom on this screen, Guidelines for Road Diet Conversions, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, they did theirs in 2011. Kentucky is where the action is right now in terms of research and design of these projects, because they're taking this 3-lane conversion idea up into corridors that have 24, 25, 26,000 ADT in Louisville and Lexington, way beyond what we ever thought was possible. And they're having success with it, as long as they do it very carefully. So, but we've been doing this a long time. We have a lot of experience with it. We have a lot of confidence that your corridor has the traffic volumes that'll make it successful. You have the types of crashes in your corridor that we can address through this through a change. We really see it as a very excellent candidate for this treatment. There will be issues to work out. There's no doubt about it. The other thing I would leave you with is, in most communities where we do this, we've done it because a community has come to us. We got a speeding problem. We got a problem with turning movements at an access. That we've got a crash problem. We offer this solution, and this is the project. The 4 to 3 lane conversion is the project. We fix the signals. We repaint it. Put up a work zone. Remove markings one day. Paint the next day. Take the work zone down, and boom. We have a 4 to 3 lane conversion done in 2 days. Very, very dramatic change in the environment. Because we're doing this, we would do this as part of a reconstruction project. Your transition is going to be very, very gradual. You're going to be living in an environment where, for the most part, during construction, we'll have 1 through lane in each direction. That's just a necessary part of construction. When we get out of this, if we get out of this with a 4 to 3 lane conversion, we're going to add back in that capacity benefit we get from the center turn lane when we open it up to full traffic. I think for the community, it's going to feel like a very, very nice project after it was done. So, going forward, we've accepted WHKS's traffic study. We've taken our own independent look at the crash aspects of this. DOT wants to proceed with a 4 to 3 lane conversion. We would like you as a city council to be our partners in that and affirm that's the decision you want. We aren't going anywhere. We're staying in business in the DOT. We're concerned about safety. We're concerned about mobility. We'll be concerned about that, as the project progresses, certainly during the project and after the project. If there are issues that crop up, then we are available to help with the solution to those issues. It's going to take a little time to judge, though. We've obviously got 2 years of construction. Then we're trying to find documented evidence of something that doesn't happen. You'll have crashes out there. The best would be extremely pleased with the 50% reduction in crashes, but there are still going to be crashes that occur. So the question is, we need to accumulate a year or 2 worth of crash data to be able to make a comparison. Did we achieve the crash reductions after the project is done? It'll take some time to gather that experience to be able to judge it. But DOT will be here. We'll be your partners if you want to go forward with it.
Before we get to general questions, could you address the pedestrian issue? It seems on the east side of the river, particularly, but both sides of the river, we have pedestrian issues. It's kind of presently the way it's constructed. We have a lot of near accidents, a lot of people hit. There's some issues we can do, whether it's 3 or 4 lane, but is the 3 lane more pedestrian friendly, in your opinion?
We think so. I have a secret slide here that wasn't part of my presentation, but it's that same task. I mentioned about 3 lanes being a forgiving roadway design for vehicles. I think they're a forgiving roadway design for pedestrians too. First of all, with the 3-lane, your crossings can be a little bit 10 feet narrower. It's that buffer space, before you step out into a traffic lane, you've got 5 feet on each side. So your crossing time, the crossing distance is a little bit narrower. The upper photo there is a pedestrian crossing in a 4-lane environment. Once you start out there, there's no place to be. You got to cross. You got to get over to the other side. In a 3-lane, if you get stuck out there, then that center turn lane can act as a little bit of refuge, to separate the pedestrian from the through traffic. If there's a vehicle that comes in there to make a left turn, they're going to be moving slowly, and that pedestrian's going to be standing right in front of them where they can't miss seeing them. We hope miss hitting them, but they can't miss seeing the pedestrian because it is right there. So yeah, we think it's a preferred design for pedestrian crossings. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, because as we become more pedestrian friendly, it's a huge need for our downtown businesses, but both sides of the river.
That'd be a question you should ask the Sioux Center mayor when you call him tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
And I didn't pay them to talk nice to you.
Yeah.
They don't know that I'm offering that.
Yeah.
Just call them.
Well, I think we want to have general, this was just kind of interrupting questions. We want to have a council question to both Scott and you, Dave, and Nick, if necessary. So let's turn to council feedback.
I guess two main questions that I have would be, one, the main goal of Waverly has been for quite a while to, we're completing 10th Avenue and the Cedar River Parkway, and the main goal of Waverly is to swap with Bremer Avenue, or with Bremer Highway 3 to be our 10th Avenue at some point, and have Waverly have Bremer Avenue. And everything that you told us tonight is 3 lanes is the better way to go, but we've spent millions and millions of dollars building brand new roads as of just 18 months ago that are 4 lanes with permanent brick inlay in between that can't be converted to 3-lane unless you tear it all up.
Right.
So why did we spend all that money to build new roads that we eventually want to be Highway 3 as 4-lane roads, and now you're telling us that it's better to be 3-lane roads? And will you ever convert knowing that we have only 4-way road options out there?
I believe you were referring to 10th Avenue Southwest. And the original proposal was to go with the 3-lane, and that was rejected by the council. Okay, we looked at 2-lane and 3-lane, and there was a citizens committee that was put together. This was a section of land that had a lot of opportunity for development on both sides, and so the decision at that time was to go with a divided 4-lane facility with the opportunity to build those left turn lanes, just like we have on the 4th Street corridor going south of 10th Avenue. Right. Okay. Going back to your earlier question regarding the amount of stacking traffic that we have for westbound traffic wanting to turn south. And we have the revised modified drawing up here, and these are painted medians, not raised medians. And I want to ask you if I've got your concern. Give me the short cord tonight. So this is 4th Street over here, and that there are certain times of the day where, yes, we end up with a lot of traffic wanting to go west, turning south, and yeah, we can have 20, 30 vehicles wanting to turn left to go south, and I agree with there's this concern that with these painted medians that you're going to get this left turning traffic queuing up in that through lane. So the question I asked Scott, and that the DOT I think will need to review, is on this westbound lane here, do we want these painted medians here, or should it just be one long continuous left turn lane? Going
That's
back,
exactly what I was asking.
So,
But I could see how both cause problems, because in your case, if you leave the painted in there, like you said, the right lane, you're only going to fit, 8 cars there, and then, everyone else is going to have to sit in the right lane waiting to turn left, which is going to clog up both lanes, just no different than it is today.
okay,
But if you make it all a turn lane,
as it functions today at certain times.
yep. So then, but the difference with today is when all of those cars are in that lane turning left and they're blocking the entrance to 3rd Street, to Fairway, to 2nd Street, to 1st Street, there are 2 lanes. So if someone wants to turn left into Fairway, they're in the left lane and people going east can still go by them.
No different than it is today.
Okay.
I think what you just described is probably, to me, you really did a good job of selling 4 lanes. Because if you have the turn lane that extends the whole way, it's no different than it is today.
Would you like to comment on, this is one isolated section. And is this an a la carte for the council to decide block by block whether it's 3-lane or 4-lane or how it's configured?
The biggest problem we have with these conversions is when we make a transition from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. We have to find a place to drop one through lane. Usually it's done by creating a right turn only lane at an intersection. It's that situation in Clear Lake that I showed you, that aerial photo. That's a major signalized intersection. I wonder if I can pop back to that real quick. Well, maybe it's not necessary. It's just an aerial photo. But we have a major signalized intersection where we drop a right turn lane. That 4 to 3-lane conversion there has been a dramatic success, except for that point where we transition from true westbound through lanes to 1. We do it by designating a right turn only lane. There's pretty much a pattern developed where people ignore that. They blow on through, they merge several hundred feet down the roadway, contrary to what the pavement markings and what the laws would provide. It takes several hundred feet in order to effect that transition. And your blocks are just, 350 feet long. It probably takes twice that length in order to effect a good transition to getting a lane dropped. So in practical terms, to come into this corridor and say, we're going to try to treat this downtown section, these 3 blocks as one thing, then we've got issues, trying to transition to a 3-lane outside of that I think would create way more problems than it would solve. We've tried to put this pavement marking together as a scheme as a way to solve this. There could be that possibility that we don't paint the one island in the westbound direction. Sorry. That we don't paint the one island in the westbound direction at each of the intersections. What I would see is that those serve a beneficial function for non-peak times. They will guide drivers when you don't have that 20-vehicle queue. And I would think in most communities, as long as people were being responsible, I'm speaking for my friends in enforcement, as long as people were being safe and responsible, that left turn queue would back up across that pavement marking, that painted island. It would back up into the next block, and life would go on. You'd have exactly the situation you have now.
Technically,
it's against
illegal,
the law.
Right? Okay.
Technically, it's against the law to use that paint.
Okay. That's what I thought.
But it serves a purpose when volumes are low, and when volumes are high, I think the community would develop their own kind of norm for what's acceptable behavior, as long as there weren't,
Yeah.
as long as there weren't a lot of.
Just wouldn't enforce that law if it's traffic's busy.
Yeah, I guess I'm not comfortable talking about creating
Well,
norms and going against
I
the law.
haven't got my original question answered, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So Waverly always wants to transition Highway 3 to be 10th Avenue. So
Is that true? I've heard opposite of that.
that's the chamber's number one goal, is to have Bremer be a Waverly so we can do whatever we want with it.
It has been.
I don't think that's a council position.
There's been a
It
chamber
may be a
commission,
position
very-
of
very
some
definitely.
people within the community, but that has never been a staff or council position on this.
Okay. Well,
I guess I took it up. There have been some very serious discussions, so I kind of assumed that was really the plan from the chamber.
I know the chamber has always wanted
Yeah,
that.
so maybe that's kind of where,
So we could do our own bump outs and park benches and
yeah, the vision.
Be
of-
like Cedar
Everything that
Falls.
is, every one of those is being incorporated into this project. Bump outs, park benches, trash receptacles, planters,
Trees.
light poles, flags, you know.
So that question's answered. So we're never gonna do the swap, is what you're saying. That's not a.
I'm never going to say never, but I think that has been an idea of some, but there's never been a formal position taken out by the city council.
That might be maybe yeah. It's done by other
Okay,
organizations.
so
but-
in order to kind of keep things moving along here, I think, Wes, your concern has been identified with this. I think it does warrant some revisiting. School is going to be going back into session. I think that there are a couple of locations that certainly warrant further observation to see how they function and to see if what is being proposed is matching up with what we're seeing out there. I want to go to one more thing related to the mayor's question regarding pedestrian accommodations in the downtown, and that's the existing, get it right here, in the right direction. So, in the downtown central business district, west, east side of the river, this is what we have today. You have 4 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes. So if you're parked trying to get out of your vehicle to go to that business, I think we all are very mindful of opening that door with the concern that it's going to be taken off by another passenger vehicle or a dump truck or a semi going through town. The 3-lane through the downtown, curbs are in the exact same location. Here's the center turn lane, 14 feet wide, so there's that additional buffer and space for that combine. But here's your parking lane, and here's that 5-foot buffer that Dave was talking about. This ought to be a more pedestrian-friendly environment for people getting in and out of their vehicles, because we have parallel parking from, I think it's about 5th Street on the east, all the way over to the railroad tracks. Parallel parking along the entire corridor. Now, as we talked about, there is probably a 4 or 5 block stretch on the west side of the river where we won't have that benefit. But along the remaining corridor, from 12th Street west over to, I think, 5th or 6th Street on the east, you will have that benefit of having that buffer between getting in and out of your parked vehicle and the travel lane.
So the bike path part.
It's not being signed or promoted or as a bike lane. It certainly does provide a buffer for that person who is older, more experienced, wants to bicycle in the downtown area. Right now, they have to do it
With the traffic.
with the
Because we
traffic.
talked like a long time one night,
And,
unfortunately.
you know,
If it's not marked as a bicycle, then aren't bicycles required to ride on the driving surface? Isn't that the rule for
It's
bicycles?
the law that we passed, actually. We passed
Yeah.
that ordinance.
I thought that was just a state rule.
It is,
that They have
yeah.
to ride in the
We just
driving.
decided to follow the state rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, are you going to license or give a ticket to someone who's,
Everything I know is they travel on the travel portion.
That's what Rich, Chief Purcell and Chris Neindorf worked on that, the whole language, and we voted on that about a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, to follow the state law, which is you have to drive in the lane of traffic with a bicycle, treat him as a vehicle.
so really, you're going to make an issue of someone driving in this?
I'm just telling you, that's what,
No, I just.
But
I just-
yeah, I'm saying if
I was just
we're
asking
telling
for
people they have to
clarification
drive
if
in the
that
travel
was-
lane,
I've seen some pictures with bike, like a bike.
we
painted
have
on
that
concrete.
ordinance. I'm just telling you that we passed that ordinance a couple of years ago.
It can be. It certainly can be identified and marked as a bike lane.
But what's the plan? Had that changed or not?
We started to get a lot of opposition saying, why are you doing that?
Okay.
Because the thing about these bike lanes, and Dave showed some slides here of some other areas, would some parent think that they can take their 8-year-old down there and be on Bremer Avenue?
That's the point. We don't want bike lanes, so.
That's my point, exactly.
I'm
So that is my point exactly, Wes, why we have discussed this, not as promoting a bike lane and marking and painting it that way, but providing a buffer for people going to the downtown, for people getting in and out of their vehicles, and yes, for people that want to bicycle on Bremer Avenue. Now, if you're saying that Paul ought to be, if someone's in that buffer area with their bicycle, ought to be
telling you
ticketed for
the
not
law
being
that
in the
we
travel
passed
lane.
2 years ago. I'm not telling you anything, and we're agreeing. You're trying to make an argument where there is no argument here.
I was
We
just
agree
trying to
with you.
clarify if that was in the plan or not anymore.
I don't want a bike lane there, so I 100% agree with you.
So in the event someone is parallel parking here, what happens to the travel lane? That gets stopped? Or they're going to be forced to go around into the turning lane? What happens then?
I think that's very common in these 3 lanes, Dave.
I think it gets stopped as it does now,
Yeah, but now they have the opportunity to go into another travel lane,
unless there's somebody turning left,
unless there's somebody turning left.
which is very common, so.
Does anybody
Fresco has on-street parking.
have you
A lot of these,
the option of head-in parking on there? Is enough room for them?
there is not enough room for that. Ingersoll Avenue, like the one I gave you a case study, that has both diagonal parking and parallel parking and higher volumes, and parking operates.
I guess the big question I have looking at this right now is knowing those handful of events in wintertime where we get enough snow that it's piled in the middle of Bremer now until we get a chance to remove it overnight. That eliminates that turning lane as any usefulness. Now you're down to 1 lane each direction. Whereas how we do it now, it ends up with 2 very narrow lanes. People have learned to drive on Bremer when it's that way. We talk about there's being parallel parking on the sides of the roads, but really from Fifth Street going west, Fifth Street going west, there's hardly anybody that ever parks on Bremer Avenue. How many people park in front of Quick Star on Bremer versus pulling up into the Quick Star lot, which makes sense.
So, Tim, to get to your question, I think what will probably end up happening is people are going to use that buffer lane or use that buffer area as part of the through lane, and you're still going to have people making that left turn, and people in that through lane are going to squeeze over more towards the parked vehicles. So the snow removal in that case functions just as it does today, that for a couple days until the snow is removed, we modify our driving habits
Because that was I only had 2 questions. But my second question was snow removal. So I don't understand how that would work, because a lot of people have asked me about that. We pile all of the snow into the middle of the road. Yes, Pete, I know you're listening. You talk a lot during meetings, and we can all hear you up here, so that's great. And it can be over car length high. So how can you fill the turning lane with snow for a day or two, and then we don't have any turn lanes anymore? We just have a literally single lane on each side.
How can you fill the inside lanes of a 4-lane with snow?
Well, we really
and
don't
not have any ability
because
to make left turns?
You fill that 10 feet, and 5 of it is the line in the middle. So we still have 2 lanes on each side when the snow's in the middle.
Do you want to give a shot at this?
But so we're not going to change any of our snow removal habits. We're going to do it the exact same way. We're going to just put snow in the turn lane and have it be there for a day or 2, like we do now. Okay, just so citizens know that, because that's.
I have a question on the traffic lights. In larger cities, they have very comparable problems of backed up traffic, and they'll often, because of the different police forces and stuff, but they'll put a traffic person out there for that half an hour or whatever to move the left turning traffic faster. But now we have sophisticated traffic lights. It seems to me that the amount of cars that move per light signal is too few. Can this problem be solved with more generous time sequences to the left turning traffic, which is the dominant need?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, because that's what I was going to also respond to Wes's question, is that when we did the traffic study, we put it into a modeling system that helps us set the queue length or the green cycle lengths so that we can optimize the intersections. So that answers your question. Yeah, we'll have possibly more green time for a dedicated or permitted left turn or protected left turn. So that's all in the traffic study. That's how we were able to determine the level of service. So those are all what we basically did as part of the traffic study. So it may be, this cycle of this intersection is 100 seconds, and so much of that is green, so much yellow, so much red. Each one is different, set up so that intersection will operate optimally. So you will be able to set it to have more left turns, or protected left turns, say at 4th. Just as we go through and do that.
It just is elementary, because it never seemed to me that we had too much traffic. It just seemed like we had stoplights that didn't allow the traffic to turn left.
Yeah, and that's what's in our study.
You can't just move 5, 6, 7 cars. You got to move 15 cars.
Yeah. And then we use that to determine the queue length, how long we need that left turn to be, and that's how you really develop the level of service. So that's in the traffic study, and I haven't really talked to Mike about how the traffic's, the interconnection and all that, but we should be able to program the lights based on what we've done in the traffic study to help with the flow of traffic to keep that level of service C.
That would be what the mayor brought up is exactly true, and we've brought that up at City Council a lot. I mean, that's the main complaint of citizens is when you turn to go south out to Walmart again, that green arrow only lets 1 or 2 cars go through. And so that's what causes a huge backup of everyone going left. So for some reason, we haven't changed that arrow in all these years, but maybe we will when we do this project.
Or have a traffic person there.
Be nice to maybe to keep the north-south lights from going green too quickly so that the cars that are going through when it's red have a chance to go there.
Yeah, because most of them go through when it's red now.
The cars that are going through on red?
Oh, yeah, there's 3 or 4 that go through on every time it turns.
Sure, he's well aware of all of that.
This council will solve any problem. Just turn us loose. Other comments? It's really helpful to get these issues out there. We need to address them, and thank you,
I guess
City
my
Engineer.
other concern I had, Mr. Mayor, what is still looking at that, and I didn't get a chance to be here earlier tonight to look at that modified length between 1st Street West and 4th Street West. it looks like from what you showed, it's still kind of essentially staying as a 4-lane,
That's right.
but with just the dedicated left turns.
I
You're
would argue
making it-
differently. I would argue differently. Operationally, it's acting as a 3-lane in the sense that we're providing one through lane of travel in each direction.
But you're losing
We
that-
happen to have side-by-side left turn lanes instead of one combined.
You're
left turn.
losing the buffer zone in that area.
Correct.
So it's still, as it is now, just
Right.
that middle lane
So
on both
It's
directions.
the side-by-side left turn lanes. That's probably a more accurate, better description.
Yeah, we
of
can,
it.
it's an unusual section. It really is, and it's driven by that predominant truck movement that you have coming from Nestle going south out of town.
Yeah, and that's one of my concerns, if we're gonna have the rest of the town be 3-lane, having a 4-block section be 4-lane seemed to be possibly raising confusion for drivers driving through.
But operationally, we're trying to come up with a scheme that provides a one through lane of traffic through there.
What does that
So
do
it's just a
on,
question of where the left turns go.
what does that do on the bridge? Because there really isn't any need to turn on the bridge.
Right, so the bridge is your standard 3-lane.
So the middle lane isn't gonna be used at all?
Nope.
No, if you're turning towards the fire station or you're turning north towards City Hall.
Back that far up when they're turning in either of those directions.
Going first is a lot more.
Across the bridge, you have to use the space for something. So it's just easier to keep it, paint it as a conventional 3-lane and.
One of the questions, I'm not sure if it's been answered, I guess I don't know the answer, is if, I probably have a 2-part question. I guess first, are there any, what would be the ramifications if a council would actually say, no, we want this to be a 4-lane highway?
Traditionally, the DOT would say, fine, we'll continue it as a 4-lane. We'll be back to visit it someday. When you decide you have a crash problem you want to solve, when you decide you have a speeding issue you want to solve, when you decide you have a pedestrian issue you want to solve, there's very little we can do with an undivided 4-lane to improve those. The improvement is to make it a 3-lane. So we would be patient, and we would come back, we'll talk about it again someday. In the later setting, it's going to cost, I don't know, $100,000 to set up traffic control, remove pavement markings, put new pavement markings down. Doing it as part of the project is effectively free. It would cost us $100,000 to do it later if we wanted to convert it. If we wanted to convert it to a 3-lane later, or if we wanted to do it as a 3-lane now and convert back to a 4-lane, it's going to be about that range, I would guess.
So I guess the question, there wouldn't be, any delay, there wouldn't be any impact of funding?
None. And our issue, we feel very strongly, Mike and I have had a discussion, the DOT feels extremely strongly about safety. I'm here because I'm passionate about this. I've seen this improvement work. I have great confidence in it. But from a department standpoint, we're more focused on fatal crashes. We're more focused on serious injury crashes. We're focused on the C-57s, the Janesville interchange type projects, Viking Road, Green Hill Road, Ridgeway. We're focused on those types of level of things. This is a wonderful opportunity. But the minor costs of injuries, the minor costs of, I shouldn't say minor costs, the cost of injuries, the cost of property damage ones are really borne by your citizens. They're not borne so much by our road use fund taxpayers. They're borne by your citizens. So it really makes sense to have it, traditionally, to have it be a city decision.
Just so I could just interject one thing here real quick. It seems like an appropriate time to make the point. I was a little caught off guard and almost bothered by some of the comments that were made at the earlier meeting about we're only going to reduce it by so many injuries, those type of things. I think it's important for the community to know that when someone makes a call to 911, the dispatcher really doesn't know if there's minor injuries, serious injury,
Exactly.
death. They send Paul and his group. Right behind that, they're sending the ambulance.
Exactly.
And 75% of the time, they're sending the fire department.
Exactly.
So now we're not only using more city resources to respond to those problems. We're putting more people on the road that the accident is on, plus we're disrupting the traffic flow because we now have 2 to 3 police cars there. We have at least 2 fire trucks that show up. We have at least 1 ambulance there, and we're still trying to keep traffic going. So it just seemed, I know what the individual was trying to do. They were trying to justify not doing the correct thing and trying to reduce accidents because it was only 7 a year. But that 7 a year adds up to a lot of community resources, time, effort, money, possible injuries to responders. I appreciate your continued focus on safety. It goes a long ways in a lot of other different directions, so thank you.
I agree with your comment wholeheartedly.
Probably, I guess the second part of my question is I'm really kind of confused why council would be involved at all. I mean, this is a highway. It's a DOT highway, and I really struggle why we would be involved. And and it kind of scared me. Mike said, we can parse out block by block and so forth. I'm really concerned. Recently we had some downtown construction and the road closed, and we were told it's a DOT highway. We don't have any jurisdiction there. So I'm really kind of confused why we would be asked to. This is all really good information, but I would wonder why we'd be asked to actually vote on something, and I'm not sure what we would vote on.
It is a primary highway extension. Under the laws of the state of Iowa, it's under the concurrent jurisdiction of the city of Waverly and the Iowa DOT. We each have our own responsibilities. The city operates the traffic signals. Those are your traffic signals. We help fund them in projects. We have funding programs to help with that. But the operation of those, the timing, the phasing of them, the electrical maintenance of them are yours. That's a really critical aspect of operating a highway. We are responsible for pavement maintenance from face of curb to face of curb. The city is responsible for maintenance of the roadway beyond the curbs. Highway lighting is yours. We don't fund highway lighting for whatever you want. Every time there's a utility permit, a new driveway permit, any kind of permit going on, the city signs off to recommend, we sign to approve. If we don't get a city approval of that permit, we don't sign it.
But all those.
So we are the city of Waverly and the DOT are linked here forever, as long as Iowa 3 passes through the corridor. We each have our own respective responsibilities established under the code. We think this roadway configuration is an important part of its operation and the mobility that we see. It ties in very clearly with the operation of the traffic signal system. That's why we, in our mind, we link it.
And I understand the differences. But this summer, we had Bremer Avenue shut down, not totally, but construction, because there's water lines, which would be a permit, I'm assuming, going from one side of Bremer to the other, and that caused construction. And there was detours set up, and we didn't vote to approve any permits. We didn't vote to approve any of we were told that the DOT signed off on the detour, the DOT signed off.
The traffic control.
But we didn't vote on any of that stuff. So I guess that's where we were told we didn't have control over.
So when
who
someone
shuts
has a
down
water
Bremer
main
and
leak
when.
and needs to have it repaired and they have to set traffic control up for that, do we go to council to get their approval to do the water service repair?
Well, when you shut down the entire length of Bremer Avenue for
It wasn't
3
shut down.
months,
There was traffic management through the entire corridor.
Okay, you can call it that, but we didn't vote on that, I guess is what I'm saying. We were told that it was the DOT's road. This was
But
their design.
either way, I think Dave's question is an interesting question, and I thank you for the response. But that would be a lot of people's question. We are in partnership, and you're taking a lead here with a lot of wonderful background, and it's pretty convincing. But in terms of the role of the council, it's an interesting question. It'd be almost, seem like we could just affirm what you're going to do, and with the right to come back and say after a year or two that this isn't working if it isn't working, and so. But tonight, flipping subjects, I think that what I wanted to see was just every issue that could be a problem comes out so that we can address it. I don't want anything left not on the table. Maybe we didn't really talk about 16th Street enough. That could be an interesting problem when middle and high school get there. But the ag vehicle size, I mean, that needed to be talked through. We did. What you're basically saying is that the same amount of space and people just accommodate because they're big, and anything big like that gets preference, and we just do. That's part of just living together.
Smart person lets the combine win, basically.
Yeah, it's just, you just do. And, but this left turn lane thing is, so, but we looked at solutions, and if we can control the amount of cars like Wes and I were talking about, I think your studies say that it's not abnormal to have that much left turn traffic at peak hours, but we got to be able to address it. If we didn't and we back everything back up into that right lane, we got a problem. And so we got to make sure that we don't have a problem because all the other benefits are great. Anyway.
I would share that, with that Clear Lake situation I talked about where we affect that 4-lane to 3-lane transition, we have revised that, I believe, 3 different times since it went in.
Yeah.
We've changed pavement markings. They happen to have a raised left turn island. We've modified the design of that island. We've changed signing and markings and traffic signal timing and phasing. We've been there 3 times working on that, trying to find the better solution. So I think we have to use our judgment to figure out the best thing to try first.
Yeah.
And if it works, great. We've got problem solved. If it doesn't, then it's something that we're going to have to look at, modify, and try something new. It's a tough thing to try and anticipate what the average driver is going to do sometimes, how they're going to operate. And we have ideas, but the average driver will figure it out. It's those drivers on the fringe. I mean, we all come to the driving task with varying amounts of experience, varying amounts of abilities. There's the old famous joke, that 90% of the drivers are above average. But we know that's not true.
Right.
Right. So some of these things you have to take the plunge and try it, using your best judgment going into it, how you think it'll work. And then we have to be cognizant to observe it and adjust to it. And then we can do that. We will
back
be
back
with
to
you.
David's point here a little bit. I think that you have so much at stake as well as we do. We live here, but you're a highway and you're putting huge amount of monies into this, and it is economical for us to move right now. But on the 3-lane, but it's almost like it seems it should be your project that we affirm, rather than the council comes down to a vote of 3 to 4. If you can fine tune that difference.
Isn't that what as you wrapped up your presentation, you said you are comfortable with the 3-lane? You're asking us to confirm that, correct?
The DOT is recommending it.
Right.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
I would.
If you
I
want to
feel
affirm
comfortable
that,
for us affirming it. If we don't affirm it, it would be some paralysis that we'd have to figure out. But it's your project, and you've been pretty convincing, as long as we can solve some of these other problems. So I would see a vote to affirm your project. That also gives us some leeway if things don't go exactly right. We just can come back to you and say this didn't. It's just easier, I think, dynamically. But David, I don't know. I'm not trying to take your position,
to me,
but
I would want to be very clear. This is not a council decision.
What if council decided,
Well,
decided not to vote? What would DOT do?
That's an interesting question.
Just bone to throw to you, what if council decided not to take a position?
Well,
What would DOT
That would
do?
be unprecedented.
I mean, is
in
that
our
somewhat where
experience.
I'll be honest, I will not vote that a combine will go down a 3-lane highway and cars will get out of its way. I can't do that. So that's my struggle.
Just a
Well, they
curious
do
thought.
now, Dave.
What would you do if council decided not to vote?
That would be unprecedented in our experience of doing this in dozens of communities. You would be unique in that sense.
Yeah.
That the council
Unique
hasn't
isn't
taken a
bad, is it? I
position
mean, it's
one
nice to
way
be
or
in-
the other.
I'm not taking that position.
No, I'm not either, Mayor. I'm just
No.
curious what the
Yeah.
answer would be.
I'm just saying
What would
that
you do
the
if that
vote
happened?
will be
I
to
believe-
affirm the DOT project.
If council took no position, I believe our response would be to paint it as a 4-lane. We aren't making the situation any worse. If it's your choice, that you don't want to pursue, the benefits that we see as a 3-lane conversion, that would be fine.
But we wouldn't have a choice, I think is what
Well, it's,
the mayor was saying. No, we're not laying our choice onto you. And this is just me. I guess I was confused kind of all this time of why we would get involved because it's not ours.
And-
10th Avenue, we would. Any other street, we would. We'd probably defer to DOT to provide their expertise. But we would probably make the final decision because we own the road.
Right.
In this case, we don't.
But,
we live around
but is your explanation?
Actually, I think the underlying right-of-way is yours. We're on city platted right-of-way.
Yeah. To me, you made a convincing argument of why we're in partnership and why we could vote. I'm just fine-tuning the type of vote we take. So we are not, as a council, then deciding lane configuration. What we're doing is affirming your position and with the convincing arguments you've given.
And DOT won't have any problem with that.
Okay.
And
Any
as we
other
discussed earlier, nothing's
last
gonna
words of
change.
wisdom?
One thing I thought about too is, we're so focused on 20th through 8th. What happens from 8th east to the rest of the way out? Is that going to be transformed to 3-lane as well? Is 8th the turn to go towards north towards Bremer? Am I correct?
You're correct, and
Okay.
and I think the plan is to restripe that section.
Yes, that's
Okay.
where your transition occurs now
Sure.
between
Yep.
the 4-lane and the 3-lane.
Right, because it's technically 4-lane for a couple blocks in there, give or take, but that, it's kind of been overlooked a little bit, but it's not
We
a.
paint that and make it all 3-lane.
It just doesn't get reconstructed is all.
Right.
Question. Will
Yeah.
we be keeping the same speed limit? So, I mean, it's 25 just literally in the downtown area, and then once you get about 6th Street or Jimmy John's way, it turns to 35, and we keep the same speed limits we have today.
We would anticipate that. Now, a change in the fundamental lane configuration will have an effect on speeds. The unfortunate thing happens when we do a speed study, we come in and measure speeds, and generally the results suggest the speed limit should be higher. Cities don't take that as very welcome news. I think I would envision us doing the 3-lane, watching it and observing it, and you folks will see it here locally before we will see it, but you can judge, your police officers can help us consider whether or not those speed limits are set appropriately, or whether there needs to be adjustment, and if there is, we can do a speed study. And
That's, the one person I've had that has contacted me in favor of going 3 lanes, their main purpose for doing that was to slow traffic downtown. But your studies have shown the speeds are going to stay the same regardless of what lanes we have.
it may,
Yeah. Well, that's what your studies
or it may
show.
tend to, like I said, what we found in Clear Lake is that the slower drivers speed up, the faster drivers slow down,
Sure.
and the drivers tend to become more in compliance with the speed limits that are out there. If we see that, we measure we do a statistical sampling of speeds and doing a speed study, try to arrive at that speed that 85% of the traffic is driving at or lower. That's a guideline we look at setting a speed limit. But if we can get a speed limit within 3 or 4 miles an hour, plus or minus of that 85th percentile speed, we think that's pretty good compliance.
Okay.
So we see a lot of corridors where compliance is worse than that. So nothing too magical about speed zoning, but we would anticipate doing the 4 to 3 lane conversion, leaving the speed zones as they are, seeing how they fit after it's done.
The other question I had in regards to east end of the highway, do you know how long ago that went to 3 lane on the east end of town, and how that decision came about?
96.
Was it 96?
That was rebuilt.
Was it done through city approval or DOT, or how did that come about? Did we go with their recommendation, or did they just do it?
I think that was a rural 2-lane, and because of the amount of development along the corridor, that it was recommended to go to the 3-lane to provide that refuge for the left-turning vehicles. And again, that's a traffic safety improvement because of the rear-end accidents.
Right, because we're kind of going through the same thing, just in my terms, another generation of, we went, like you said, from 2-lane, we changed it, this was why, who made the choice, and how did it get voted on, I guess.
Well, I think maybe a more current comparison is the 4th Street Southwest corridor. That corridor it used to be from, we refer to it as DQ to BK, has a high accident, or a high crash rate. Proper terminology is use crash. And a lot of them are rear-end collisions. We've known for years and years, for 2 decades, we've known how to eliminate or dramatically reduce the crash rates. But there has to be a public will to do that, a community will to do that. The DOT has been there to support that project, but locally, the community has been opposed to it. Right. Initially it was trees, and that we're going to lose the character of the corridor. But our community continues to grow. If we're not building new urban arterials to help disperse the traffic and provide new routes, we're going to keep putting more and more traffic onto the 2 major roads, 4th Street and Bremer Avenue. Over the past 20 years, the trees have aged, the trees are dying.
The Emerald Dashboard came through and wiped most of them out anyway.
Yep. That's happening on private property. We don't have any ash borers in the corridor, in the public right-of-way along that corridor. And the other thing that's happening is the pavement is deteriorating. It's going to have to be rebuilt. We undertook a project in 2001 that coincided with the demolition of the building where the Veterans Tribute is. That demolition of the building provided the opportunity to widen out the south leg of the intersection and provide better turning movements, to provide 2 northbound lanes, to again help the flow of traffic through the corridor. So incrementally, we make these improvements. The Dry Run Creek project was another opportunity to look at those improvements. There's been traffic studies, there's been presentations to the council. There has been changes in attitude over 20 years. Now people are saying, why don't you just finish the last 6 blocks? Get it done. That's now what we're hearing. And sometimes it just takes time to get public support behind doing a project.
Okay, we've covered a lot of territory, and we thank Dave Little and Scott and Nick, who didn't say much but supportive, and for this presentation. We hope believe we have all the issues out there. Some of it's going to be a little bit further study, and but we have a vision, I think, of where we might go. Last words by any council persons?
I guess I find it a little bit problematic that we're looking at trying to find a way out. I think we owe it to our constituents as representatives of the entire city to vote either yes or no on this, to listen to them. It bothers me, it just rubs me wrong to hear people saying, well, what if we just wash our hands of it and let the say it's the DOT's problem? I think, we committed to a job to represent the people, and I think we need to give them a say through our voice, through our vote.
We don't need a rebuttal. I think we stated our
I would-
positions.
I
maybe
agree with
just to
Tim. I mean, I would
clarify
like-
what I was saying is,
Go ahead.
to me, it was, the reason I brought that up is more of a technical question of, it's Highway 3, not that I'm trying to, I guess I don't want this to go to the paper that, but that we weren't willing to vote. To me, it was only about a technical question of if we should be voting on something. We're not voting on the bypass down on 218 because we have nothing to do with it. And I wanted to make sure that this is not similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with Tim. I mean, I feel like I need to vote how the public has strongly told me what they want, so I would be fine with voting, but.
Okay.
And I think we got.
And I think we have all agreed, though, that, and Dave was agreeing too, we will be voting. I mean, we aren't going to get caught in the barren land.
No, it was pure curiosity, Mayor. I had 2 hours to listen to this, and it just hit me, so I thought I'd ask it. It was pure curiosity. I didn't mean to flip the card over.
Any last words from the council? Thank you, everyone, for studying. In terms of the council, it's a lot of work for us. We got to listen to a lot of people and come forth and put this all out here and be wise. So we thank you.
And on behalf
again,
of
we
the DOT,
thank you.
I thank you for your patience, and
Yes.
if we can do anything, during this time that you're arriving at a decision, we'll be certainly glad to support and help you make that decision.
Well, yeah, thank
Whichever
you.
way it
I know
goes.
it's for deja vu for you guys because you do this in every town, but thank you. We have reports to us. The Bremer Waverly Law Board minutes from July 11th. Any comments on those? And they'll be officially received. We have the Airport Commission minutes from July 14th. Any comments on those? Will be officially received. Staff comments.
I think I said enough already.
That's
Staff,
already.
anything from any? No, I think we're good, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's do council comments. Dan and Dave.
I have nothing here.
On this side. Anybody?
Just a quick comment. Again, as hopefully everybody realizes, the Waverly Fire Department's hosting the state convention here in 2 weeks. At last count, we could have upwards of 200 firefighters coming in town for Labor Day weekend. So if you do see them wandering around town with campers, trailers, those type of things, send them to northeast part of town, and hopefully they'll find a campground, because we don't officially open until Tuesday after Labor Day. But for some reason, folks like to use the Labor Day weekend as a pre-start to convention, so.
We look forward to hosting.
My only other comment is just, we've got, well, 2, I guess. We got 3 weeks. We got next 2 weeks we're off because 5th Monday and Labor Day, so we've got 3 weeks before we have a council. So citizens at home, this was a fairly lengthy meeting, heard a lot of things, but certainly contact us, let us know where you are on the issue of Bremer Avenue. That's one thing. The other thing more is we got school starting, so kids are going to be out. A lot of them excited to get to school. We've got a nice community that makes very walkable. The weather here this next week is looking to be very nice for kids getting to and from school. So just our travelers, please be on the extra lookout for those kids that are moving about the community.
Thank you. Wes?
If I could, I'd just like to read something about the Waverly Golf Course, an event that took place that was last Sunday, the 14th. I can read what Jordan David, who's our pro shop manager, wrote about it, and I just think it's a really good thing for Waverly. So he wrote, Sunday was truly a day to remember at the Waverly Golf Course. Our first annual junior golf fundraiser tournament was a resounding success. 54 players joined us for a 2-person best shot 8-inch cup tournament. Numerous prizes were donated and given out throughout the day, including a 39-inch TV, a Nike driver, a ping putter, a 2017 single pass for the country club, among many other things. At the end of the day, we raised $1,830 that was donated to the Waverly Junior Golf Program, which I think is awesome. In the past, those donations have been used to purchase things like a tri-golf set, which includes bigger clubs, bigger golf balls, colorful targets. It has truly become a straight staple of the junior golf program here at Waverly. They've also purchased family trees, which have been installed in the golf course, family tees. And then what family tees are is actually they put a tee box sign out in the middle of the course to encourage young players and juniors to tee off so they only have 150 yards, to go instead of trying to hit 500 yards and things like that. So he just finishes up by saying, we are truly humbled at the support we were shown yesterday, and we will not be able to say thank you enough for all those who joined us, as well as those who donated raffle items to our cause. We continue to look for ways to improve our program, and days like yesterday make that possible. So I just wanted to bring that to attention of a really cool event that happened at the Waverly Golf Course, and almost $2,000 going to kids that participate in junior golf every year. So
it was well received, the letter was. Mike, did you want to weigh in on anything?
Just an observation. I was in Colorado last week, and I've gotten into the bad habit of paying attention to what city councils are doing in other towns. You're reading their sometimes really boring news stories about what they're up to. So I was at dinner with some friends, and I said, how's city council in your community? It's a pretty large town. And the response I got was, oh, they fight a lot. What's it like in Waverly? And I said, well, we disagree here, but I think we're pretty civil about that, about what we're doing. And the response was, well, hang on to that, because that's not true everywhere. I already knew that. Just thought you folks would like to know.
Thank you, Mike. Chuck?
Just want to thank everybody for allowing me to represent Waverly as guest counsel for the month of August. And once again, the Knights of Columbus will be out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And just come support us, and
Tootsie Rolls.
You can get some Tootsie Rolls.
Thank you. A quick note from the mayor to thank Carla Geyer, who participated in Iowa's Municipal Professionals Academy, and I got a wonderful letter back for how well you did, and how important this is in the whole process of us running smoothly, competently, and all your role in handling all the issues and staying up to date. So thank you for participating and getting high reviews. Motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second. All in favor with yes?
Yes.
Adjourn.